This is not a video I ever wanted to be making, and it's definitely going to be one of the hardest. For those of you that haven't been keeping up with the news in America, yesterday afternoon a political commentator was assassinated in broad daylight by a deranged nutcase who's still on the loose. They believe he was shot at by a rifle from around 200 meters away. For those of you that aren't familiar with who the person that was assassinated is, his name was Charlie Kirk. He was a political commentator out in the US, incredibly popular, had millions and millions of followers on Twitter, and gathered even more millions of views on YouTube. He was a man that would go around to college campuses with a pair of microphones, and he would encourage intellectual debate between him and other students, getting the future generations talking about the political climate, what they think is good for the world, different debates and talking points that were relevant at the time. And he had his own political views, as we all do. But the one thing that he, I think, above all else stood for was the encouragement of progressive dialogue and the encouragement of talking things out. He wasn't a man that hurt anyone. He never incited violence on anyone. He was a good man. He was a loving father of 2 kids and a loving husband as well. And my thoughts and prayers go out to the family and what they're going through, because I'm taken back by it, and I've never even met the guy, so I can't even imagine what they were going through. He was shot with his son literally next to him in the tent that he was sat at. His wife and daughter were also in the crowd. It's just an absolute tragedy that's occurred. And for those of you that are celebrating him passing because he shared a different political view than you, shame on you. Shame on you. Because at the end of the day, everyone has their own beliefs, right? Everyone has their own view of how the world should be run, what policies it have in place, right? And you should be able to accept that without feeling the need to cause harm upon someone for not sharing your views. And I think that part of the reason this really gets to me is Charlie was not someone that was, these are my views, they are right, you are wrong, and that's it. Like I said, he would go around to college campuses and get the students talking and debating, seeing if they can find common ground. He was a good man, and I tell you what, the world would be a lot better place if there were more people like him in this world. And yet some absolute scum has decided to take it upon themselves to cowardly shoot at a man who can't even see him, who's not there for violence, who's not there to start a war or to cause disruption. He's come to a campus. He was at a campus asking questions to students, encouraging dialogue, doing what he did best and what he stood for. If this isn't a wake-up call that there are certain people out there that do not care what's right, what's wrong. They do not care that your opinions may differ, and that's okay. That's not their views. They want there to be a system in place where everyone thinks and acts a certain way, and if you don't fit the textbook to what they want, a fate similar to Charlie's will follow to you as well. I can only imagine the aftermath that's going to occur after this, because like I said, he was massively influential. I'm not a particularly political person. I personally think that 99% of politicians are corrupt, so I don't really get myself involved in that sphere. Like I said, the thing that really hurts me about this, really makes my blood boil, is, like I said, I don't care about politics. I don't care if you're right, left, middle, I don't care, right? I think that everyone has they're entitled to their own views. Me personally, I think that they're all pretty much corrupt. So I know it's not a great answer, but that's the truth. I don't think that there's much hope in any of them. But like I said, what really hurts me about this scenario isn't the fact that he was a Christian conservative or anything like that. Like I said, I'm not a particularly religious person, and I'm not a particularly political person. The thing that really gets me about this is, as I mentioned, this is a man that above all else, above everything that he stood for, like I said, he had his own political views, as we all do. But the main thing he stood for was, if there's an issue, if there's a topic, we don't shut it out. We don't block out people's views that we may disagree with. We don't silence them. We encourage talking it out and finding common ground. And that is what he did. That is what he lived by. He made a movement out of, like I said, going to campuses where you have young students, handing them a microphone and having a debate. And for that, he's paid for his life. What does that tell you about the current climate we're living in? Like I said, no one, and I repeat, no one should have to fear losing their life for a political or religious view. No one. And I am seriously concerned about the future of politics, particularly in America. I mean, it was only however many months ago there was 2 separate assassination attempts on Donald Trump. You know, how many times, you know, how many times is this going to happen until, you know, something changes? Because you cannot have a political climate where if there's a candidate or a political speaker who has a different view to someone else's, their life should not be at risk. If you don't agree with him, that's fine, you can challenge him, you don't have to vote for him, but it should not ever come to the point where a person's life is in danger. Because at the end of the day, we're all human beings. We're all here, I would hope, with the mentality of leaving this world a better place than what we came into it with. And as I cannot stress enough, I'm not sat here saying you have to agree with everything Charlie stood for, everything that your neighbour stands for, or a future, you know, political candidate. I'm not sat here saying that you have to agree with them. In fact, I'm saying the opposite. I encourage challenging and debating, because I think part of the reason why the political spectrum in the UK is so poor is because the Conservatives and Labour haven't been challenged. It's been those two pretty much batting it out, and they're, in my opinion, no better than each other. So I encourage challenging political views, and so did Charlie, and I think it's important, and we cannot let his death end that message. I think that is the most important thing that I want to stress from all this. Obviously, it's absolutely tragic and horrendous, and I cannot imagine what his family are going through right now. You know, like some thoughts and prayers with them, because it's going to be a really, really tough time for them now. But what we cannot do is let his death be for nothing. We cannot put an end to intellectual debates, challenging ideas, and looking for common ground, because that, at the end of the day, is how we progress as a society. The minute that we start discouraging that, then you're not too far away from a dictatorship. And I would hope no one wants that in their country. So, like I said, I'm very taken back by it all. You know, I'm massively encouraged by the amount of support of people coming out, you know, mourning his loss, but also celebrating his life. You know, people that you wouldn't, that haven't got any say in any political realm, but they understand the message that Charlie stood for. And that's, you know, I think that just shows how influential he was and how many hearts he touched. Because like I said, there are more people like me that aren't particularly political in any way, but understood what Charlie stood for. And I think I'll end it on this. Just to summarise. Regardless of someone's political, religious, or anything else view, whatever a person believes in is their business, and they have every right to it. So long as they're not inciting violence, so long as they're not actively calling for the harm on another individual, whatever someone says, whatever their views are, that should never put in jeopardy their life, regardless of what they are. We live in a melting pot of all different races, cultures, beliefs. We all come from different backgrounds and classes, and we all have different views on how we would have a society function. And there is no right or wrong answer. There is no he's good and she's bad, or she's good and he's bad. We all have our own views, and we all think that we're right, and that if we do things our way, then the world will be a better place. At the end of the day, it's not that simple, as we all know. But I cannot stress enough, regardless of what those views are, it should never come at a cost of your life. And so, for the people celebrating the fact that a man has been assassinated just because he didn't share your political views, shame on you. Absolutely shame. I would take a long, hard look in the mirror, because, as I've said 1,000 times now, no one should have to fear losing their life because they vote a certain way, or they believe a certain God, or whatever it may be. We should all have the right to freedom of thought. And so, I think I'll end it there. And again, this man touched the hearts of millions and millions of people. He lived a life most people couldn't even dream of, and he did it all by the age of 31. He is an incredible man who was loved by so many people. and we can never forget what he stood for and the change that he brought about. Rest in peace, Charlie. Gone but never forgotten.